This just in, 50 million customers' data was not compromised this morning in a security breach that didn't happen.
Wall Street not rattled at all.
No, not at all, not at all. I mean, look at the Dow.
Sir, what went right?
Everything. Thank you.
With threat intelligence, behavioral analytics, and 6,000 experts,
いいニュースは早いね。
IBM Security will help keep you out of the news.
My dad's company wasn't hacked today. Cool.
So I want to start right now talking about every single person in this room. So as humans, we're wired to detect danger, and we're constantly scanning for threats. And our brains react much more quickly and powerfully and persistently to bad news versus good news. And this is what behavioral scientists call a negativity bias, or a negative bias. And it's not such a bad thing, actually. It's what helped us as a species survive. But it's also a big reason why we sometimes ignore when things are going well. And we see this in research over and over. There's been a lot of research on negativity bias. But we also see it in our personal lives, too. So for a moment, just imagine that you're outside, okay? Outside by the marina. And you've got your workout clothes on, and you're ready to go for a jog. But there just happens to be really, really strong winds coming right at you. And you're running right into that wind. What are you thinking about when the wind's in your face? You're thinking about, gosh, I wish this was over. If you're me, you're just giving up. You're done, waiting for a better day. Now, if you turn around and go in the opposite direction and the wind is at your back, what are you thinking? Well, maybe for a split second, you're thinking that, oh, that felt good. But then you move on to other things. So you sort of obsess about the negative and don't obsess about the positive. And I see this in my own family, actually. When my family gets together for holidays and we start talking about memories, it's always a memory like this. When I was 5 years old and I was running in my basement and I tripped over Legos. It's always Legos. And I split my head open. It was traumatic. These are the things that we remember, the negative things sometimes. And certainly in the press, the old saying goes, if it bleeds, it leads. And that's for a reason. People pay attention to the negative. And that's why I like that opening video so much, because it sort of plays a trick on our minds and makes us focus on the positive, especially in this industry we're in cybersecurity. And the message there is that it's not all bad news. We have made fantastic progress in security. We have made progress. I mean, look no further into your pockets, take out your mobile phone, and marvel at all the security features that are embedded within it. You've got two-factor authentication, you've got authenticated applications, default encryption all the way down to the hardware layer, and we're seeing this in other aspects of technology. Operating systems are incorporating this in the data center, mainframes, et cetera. And it's not just technology. We've seen progress in leadership in security as well. You know, I was with a group of CISOs just yesterday, 10 chief information security officers from this region, and they were remembering how it used to be only a few years ago when you can just walk into a boardroom meeting and give an update or talk to their peers or the CEO, even the CIO, and you could dazzle them with a story about the latest threat. It was only a few years ago. Now it's not the same. Security leaders are being challenged by others. They're getting tough questions asked to them, and that is a sign of progress. But sometimes progress happens actually fairly slow, okay? Much like a progress bar, and I know you've all have installed software in your life, and what happens when the progress bar stalls for a minute? It only takes a minute. That's a long time. A second, you start thinking, something's going wrong here. I want to start over. But sometimes progress takes a long time. And we have had wins in security. I actually bet that just about everybody in this room has successfully stopped some sort of cyber attack, just doing basic hygiene. Maybe you work in a SOC. You're doing amazing work. We do amazing work in this industry. So maybe it's up to me as a representative of somebody who works for a company that's been around for 107 years, 107 years, IBM, to say that we're taking the long game. We must take the long game in security. There's no magic solution here. But sometimes to make visible progress, to make big leaps in a tough area, complex area like security, it takes big bets to make visible progress. Now, before you paint me as a dumbfounded optimist, out of touch, you know, I do realize, and I empathize, because I meet with customers every day, that we're in a tough fight in security. It's almost cliche to say, it's very cliche to say that attackers are getting more sophisticated, but they are. They're working more in groups. They're using modern techniques to divide their labor, to work together. And it doesn't take much anymore to get access to zero-day exploits, to be able to rent some machines, to work with others on the dark web and kick off a campaign. And then you think about, that's just kind of the novices. What are more seasoned criminals doing? What they're doing is they're causing us a lot of pain, and it's costing us a lot of money. It's a fortune. So let's walk into this and just set some context for how much it's costing us. So we have the privilege of working with the Ponemon Institute, putting together a study on the cost of a data breach. And this isn't any other marketing study. It's a true study that's been going on for over 13 years. And just last year, the Ponemon Institute interviewed over 500 companies who exhibited a breach in the previous calendar year. And they asked them a lot of questions about what are the costs. What are the technical costs? What are the operational costs? What are the hidden costs, like lost money from business that was not able to be obtained? And what they found is that all across the world that those costs are rising. And in fact, here in Singapore alone, the average cost of a data breach is about $3.4 million. And that cost has risen since last year, about 6%. And as you dig into this report, and I encourage you to do that, I encourage you to dig into this report, there is reams of information by region, geo. There's one fascinating thing about the number one factor that attributes to these high costs, and it's the time that it takes to successfully identify and contain that breach. So what do you think the average time is to contain or identify and contain a breach? 30 days, 60 days, a month or two? It's way worse than that. The average time, if you're an average-sized company, and we're talking about a breach of about 100,000 records or less, it takes almost 267 days to identify and contain that. 195 to identify, 72 to contain it. Now, to put that in perspective, I have 3 young children. That's about the time it takes for them to get through and progress a year in school. For those of you who don't have kids, another perspective, that's about the time it takes to launch a spacecraft from Earth to Mars when the orbits align. 260 days, 55 million kilometers away. It's just a way of saying that that's too long, okay? It's too long. Now, what if you could cut down some of that time? What if you could subtract 100 days that it took you to identify and contain the breach? Then you could save actually about over $1 million. And that's lost opportunity here. Now, if you identified it really early, then there's no cost. Then you're really preventing the threats, which is what we all strive for. Now, saying we have to get better at this and saying it takes too long, that's easy. It's easy to say, right? It's very tough in practice to do. Very tough. Now, I think it's time we also made some big bets when it comes to making progress for this area as well. So that's why I want to talk today about what we describe as security's new force multipliers. And what is a force multiplier? Okay? A force multiplier is when you combine the best of, say, man and machine to get an exponential result. The term comes from physics, where you have a simple machine that you do a little bit of effort and you get exponential progress out of that. It also comes from the military in a more complex environment where soldiers are augmented with gear, satellites, intelligence analysts, aircraft, tankers, and that individual unit or that individual soldier can do much more than they could possibly do if they didn't have that, right? So what are the force multipliers we have in security? So I'm going to walk through 3 of them today, and the ultimate goal is to make everybody in this room, everybody in the industry, get smarter, respond faster, and work together. Smarter, faster, together. That's the aim. And how many people we have in the room, right? Room up to 1,000 we get. I'm trying to make this room of 1,000 do the work of 10,000. And if they get that right and work together effectively and get smarter, that group of 10,000 can do the work of 100,000. This is how we make significant improvement when we're facing a skills gap, when we don't have enough people. So let's walk through the 3 of these, okay? I'm going to start with the first one. So the first one is augmented intelligence. Now, I know there's a lot that's been said at this show and beyond around AI, augmented intelligence, machine learning. So let's dig in a little bit. I want you to think about this a little bit differently, okay? So the way I like to think about augmented intelligence. Think about somebody that you know who's an expert in their field, okay? And they might be in finance, and they look at an Excel spreadsheet, and they just can see something in the data. Or a chess grandmaster who just looks at the board and can instantly know what's going on. That's actually what chess grandmasters have said they do. They rely on some sort of intuition that they've built up, that they can instantly notice and recognize the position of where they're at. And there have been studies around this as well, where they've taken chess grandmasters and amateurs, and they've analyzed their brainwaves to see what's going on when they're playing a game. And the amateur, when the chessboard is laid out, they're trying to figure out and use their cognitive part of their brain to understand what's going on, to look at all moves, to really think through everything. The chess grandmaster actually retrieves from memory, from a different part of the brain, exactly what's going on. Almost like if you were to put 5 or 6 items out on a table, I could tell you that there were 5 or 6 items without thinking about it. I didn't count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I just knew. And so that's some sort of superhuman intelligence that they've built up playing thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of the game. The only thing that I can compare to is in the morning when I'm in the shower, bear with me, and I'm thinking about my day, and I'm trying to do something creative that day, and it's on my mind, I pause, and I'm like, did I just wash my hair? I have no idea. And then I have to, ask myself a minute or two, figure out, did I wash my hair? This happens to me all the time, but my body just kind of took over. I'm using the cognitive part, and the rest of it just happened. Now, not that superpower, but more like the expert in their field. What if you had expert intelligence at your fingertips if you were trying to respond to an incident? And that's where we've been moving with augmented intelligence. At IBM, we had this very ambitious goal to teach a machine the language of cybersecurity. And why did we do that? Well, we noticed within security operations centers, security analysts, I'm based in Atlanta, Georgia, in the US. We've had a SOC there for as long as I can remember, 20 years, in fact. And the SOC analysts on their break, what do? They talk to one another. They might come back from a conference like this at RSA and describe what they learned. They might read research papers, documents, blogs, seclist.org. They're trying to find information. And it's not just codified threat intel, it's also intelligence from written accounts from other researchers. So we had an ambitious goal to try to go ahead and teach Watson the language of cybersecurity so it could retrieve and build a corpus of knowledge just like humans do. And it took a long time, and we fed it thousands and thousands of documents, but it's building a corpus of knowledge from that body of intelligence. And we're actually now allowing customers and analysts to tap into that when they're trying to find out whether or not there's something they should dig into within the SOC. It's augmenting their intel, which is quite fantastic. And it's taking investigations that sometimes would require a couple Google searches and possibly a hit. It's coming back with real intelligence quickly, taking what might take hours down to minutes. That's superhuman intelligence we need for the SOC. I'm not going to go in depth on other types of AI, but certainly machine learning is a big deal, and you're going to hear about it on the show floor and in other talks. It's making an impact. And I should say, security is no stranger to machine learning. We've been using machine learning in various forms for decades. It's how everybody's email inboxes have been filtered. But because of the new tools that we have around this area, we've been applying it to things like source code analysis to identify false positives. And it's working really great. Because instead of being driven by patterns, it learns the way in which a human programs, which is hard to write pattern analysis around. Or user behavior analytics, where it's very hard to understand what all of us do in our daily lives to know whether or not we're acting appropriately. So instead of programming a machine to identify via triggers, you baseline and learn, and then it can identify what's abnormal. So machine learning is helping out here. That's the first force multiplier, augmented intelligence. The second force multiplier is security orchestration. So the way I want you to think about security orchestration is this. Now you're a pilot, okay? Now you're a pilot, just like this, and you've just taken off, and you're 2 minutes into a flight with 150 passengers in the back, you hit a flock of birds, and both your engines go out. That's exactly what happened almost 10 years ago. So famous, they made a movie about it starring Tom Hanks. I'm sure you've heard about the Miracle on the Hudson. So what did Captain Sully do, the pilot of that plane? Immediately, he put the nose down. Immediately, he talked to the co-pilot, and they went through a 3-page checklist. He radioed air traffic control. They ground stopped all the flights from where they took off. And then he had to make a split-second decision using his own intuition of what to do next. And he landed the plane in the Hudson, and everybody was saved. Nobody got hurt. No casualties. It's a miracle. Well, the miracle happened because he was trained. The miracle happened because he had a plan and playbooks. The miracle happened because he was following a set of procedures and he had the right data at the right time, the right people to make the right decision. And that's not unlike what we deal today in a crisis with incident responders if there's a breach. And so defining playbooks is a big, big area where there's so many steps. There's not one person within an organization that knows all the steps around any given incident, who to contact, what to do, how much time it takes, what the consequences are. That's why defining those steps in an incident response set of playbooks is so important. It's so important. And it takes what could be a complicated mess of steps that no single person could understand, and it puts it into a process that can be repeated, such that you can do things in drills that might take 85 minutes, now you're taking it down to 10 minutes. Or you have triggers with the right people involved. It's coordination at its finest, and this is all about orchestration. Now, it's not just enough to orchestrate, you also have to practice. So you can have playbooks and write them down and do tabletop exercises, but my favorite saying here is nobody has ever learned how to swim from watching YouTube videos. I have a 3-year-old. She's not learning how to swim by watching YouTube videos. You got to get in the water and you have to test those muscles. You have to be in an environment where you can fail and you can work together. And that's what cyber ranges are all about. And not just any cyber ranges, right? Cyber ranges historically have been technical places where you gather packet capture information and you dive into tools and analyze malware. I'm not talking about that at all. I'm talking about places where you can test cybersecurity leadership skills in moment of crisis. We built a cyber range around that, and it's been widely successful. Over 1,500 security professionals, heads of state, CEOs, various leaders have come into this, and they get in with their team, and we simulate a breach, and then we figure out who's going to lean in and who's going to lean back. And it's all about that leadership. And we've learned 3 things here from running these exercises. 1, culture counts. So when there is a crisis, if you have a culture within your company to empower the people who work for that organization to make decisions, you're far better off. That's number 1. Number 2, you may define playbooks, but when the heat is on, all bets are off. So you've got to practice them because they crack under pressure. And number 3, which is the most surprising for us, is that sometimes you think the best leaders during a crisis are going to be ones that run the organization. Now, what's a common thread about people who typically run organizations? Well, they probably have MBAs. They've probably been taught over their history to analyze vast amounts of data and make slow, deliberate decisions. These are not the people that you want necessarily to be the leaders if there's a crisis. So who does really well in these scenarios? People with military experience, people with emergency medicine, people who are cool and calm under pressure and can make decisions quickly with conviction, and again, assess what's going on very, very quickly. So that's the second force multiplier, orchestration. And as a part of that, you got to practice. And then finally, the third force multiplier here is open collaboration. So we have a full room here, people from different parts of the globe, different organizations, different professions. But there's one thing that unites all of us, and then everyone who might be watching this in video form. We all are here because we want to make the world a safer place. We want to protect our society, our organizations. We're all here for security. And so we have to work together better as an industry, as a community. And there's been a lot that's been talked about here. I don't have enough time to go through all the details of security collaboration, but I do want to say something. I do want to challenge everybody in this room or anybody who's watching, okay? If you're a customer or a vendor, vendors open up your tools as much as you can so that they work with other tools, so that they integrate properly, share information, share action. We're all better off for it. If you're a customer, demand that your vendors do that. If you're a security researcher or a government, share your threat intelligence. Now, there might be certain circumstances where that might not be appropriate, but for the vast majority of threats, it is appropriate. And we're all better off if we share threat intel so we can work collectively to identify where those threats are. And I know there are even some vendors that want to build a business out of threat intelligence, but it's far better to share as much as we possibly can. And then finally, if you're in the world of academics, partner so you can test out your new tools, your algorithms. You have new theories, get them tested. Get them out there in practice to see if they work. So that's my challenge around open collaboration. Now, if you need help around open collaboration, we're here to help as IBM. Now, this isn't a product push. Everything you see here is an area where we're trying to invest and bring and lift up all boats in the industry. So the first area is around AppExchange in the far left. This is our marketplace where we encourage, if you're a vendor in the room, come work with us. Let's integrate our tools together. This is all about sharing tools and working together as an industry. The second area here is around threat intelligence. And the picture you see is X-Force Exchange. That isn't necessarily the only place to share threat intelligence, but we at IBM and our X-Force team decided to open up 9 terabytes of threat intelligence, 900 terabytes of threat intelligence. It's a lot. Historical threat intelligence from decades. It's constantly being fed. And we have almost 500,000 unique users each month that are getting access to this platform, and they're researching threats and they're sharing. It's completely free. Get on it today. Log on, search X-Force Exchange. There's no reason not to. And third, we as an industry also need to help for the greater public good. And the third area here is Quad 9. IBM donated our 9.9.9.9 IP address to the Packet Clearinghouse, who provides a free and privacy-focused security DNS service. 9 billion requests, DNS requests going through this address and these servers each day. And it's about having security for all of us. I encourage you to check it out. So with that, I'd like to end where I began. I began with talking about everybody in the room, and I'm going to end with everybody in the room, okay? To make meaningful, visible progress, we need to get smarter, we need to respond faster, we need to work together. And I think the 3 force multipliers, augmented intelligence, security orchestration, open collaboration, are the way that we do that. And in the spirit of now matters, these are things you can have access today. I know you will. I know you will use these. IBM's betting on you. Thank you.